Hey everyone, welcome back. And today we are joined with a very special guest today. James Foster is here to do a one round mock draft. If you guys don't know, I will leave his stuff linked down below. He puts out some incredible NFL draft content, some really good stuff over there on Twitter as well. I'll leave all of his links down in the description below. But we're going to do a one round mock draft today. We're less than a week away from the draft, getting a better idea on where some of these prospects are going to go. So how are you doing today, James?
Doing great, man. Excited to get into it.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit off camera. He's going to take the evens. I'm going to take the odds picks. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. Let's go ahead and kick this off. I'm not going to spend too much time on the number one pick. It seems like it's going to be Cam Ward. He was on a Twitch stream earlier this week talking about how Calvin Ridley and Treylon Burks are top 4 receivers in the league. And it just seems like everything is pointing towards Cam Ward being the number one pick. The Tennessee Titans need a quarterback. They went out and improved the offensive line. So we're going to make this pick here for Tennessee at number one. Take the franchise quarterback. And I think that's going to be Cam Ward.
Yep, seems pretty solid there. I think for number 2, all signs are pointing towards the Browns going with Travis Hunter. I don't think you can go wrong between Hunter or Abdul Carter, but taking Travis Hunter, that really upgrades their receiver room. Also kind of gives them a backup plan at cornerback 2 across from Denzel Ward with Martin Emerson, who I really like, but he kind of struggled last year. So kind of knocking out 2 birds with one stone there.
So where do you view Travis at the next level? Do you think he's probably going to be a receiver? Do you think he'll probably play corner? Where do you think his best position is at the next level?
So my answer to that question is kind of just whichever position I watched him play most recently, because I really think he's so good at both positions. I would initially I was pretty solid on corner, but I think I'm starting to lean more towards receiver just because that's the position where he can really impact the scoreboard. And I think from his standpoint, the money that he could make at receiver would obviously be a lot more than at corner. So I would guess receiver, but I think most likely scenario is that eventually he starts, he plays both positions, whether one of them is kind of like in a rotational role.
Yeah, I agree though. I think you could play him full-time corner, full-time receiver, and I think either one would be great. But I think I agree he'll probably be in that rotational sort of role. We got the Giants here at 3. I think they'll probably take whoever the Browns don't take. And in this case, it's Abdul Carter. Get an explosive edge rusher opposite of Brian Burns. Kayvon Thibodeau has shown some flashes at times, but I don't think he is fully broken out to being the player that they thought they were going to get back in 2022. I think Abdul Carter gives you some explosiveness and just the upside to have a legitimate, awesome pass rush with Burns, Lawrence, and obviously now you're adding Abdul Carter. So I'm going to take him at pick 3. I know they're bringing in Shadur Sanders for a private workout, but that doesn't really change my pick here for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Kind of seems like the draft starts at 4. And so we're doing like what we think is going to happen, right?
Let's do what you would do in this situation.
Okay, what would we do? Okay, well then that's easier. So what I would do here is take Armand Mimbu for the Patriots. I think like it seems like they're going to go with Will Campbell, but I think that would be a pretty big mistake. I was working on an edge rusher video this past week, and like rewatching all of the edge defenders film kind of in one sitting. What's actually more illuminating is how the offensive tackles played against common opponents, and it's pretty jarring how often Armand Mimbo went up against an SEC pass rusher and just shut him down, and then Will Campbell went up against the same pass rusher and had like 2 or 3 pressures or losses. I think a historically small wingspan, just kind of along with some foot speed questions, would make me worried about him playing tackle. I think with Mimbu, to be able to move like he does at 300 pounds or 320 pounds is pretty incredible, and doesn't have the height that some you would think of for a tackle, but I don't really think that matters for offensive line. He's got long enough arms and moves his feet really well.
So in this situation, are you moving Mimbu to left tackle in this situation and keeping Moses at right side, or where do you see this kind of working out for New England?
Yeah, so that's kind of the one question, is that you would have to. It really comes down to the private workouts and like how you feel about his ability to move to the left side. And so yeah, there is a chance that like maybe he can't play left tackle. I still think, just having not seen him work out like in private at left tackle, I feel like there's a better chance of Mimbo being an NFL left tackle than there is Campbell.
That's a fair point. I haven't seen this one often, but Mimbu's athleticism, I think he can play 4 out of 5 positions on the O-line and be a really good player. Then I got the Jags here at 5. I mean, the board couldn't have fallen much perfectly for them. You got Graham, McMillan, Genty still on the board. I'm going to do something I haven't done for the Jags. I'm going to take Ashton Genty here. There seems to be some more talk about this one happening. I'm just not the biggest fan of what they have in the running back room. I think ETN has been inconsistent, underwhelming for them at times. Genty, to me, is a generational running back prospect that has elite contact balance, speed. I think a lot of people just forget that he was a great receiving back in 2023. He just wasn't asked to do it this past year for Boise State. I think he's just a do-it-all running back weapon. You surround Trevor Lawrence with some more help on the offensive side. I think it's a good enough defensive interior class. You can get a good player in the second, but I'm going to take Ashton Genty here at 5 to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I like that pick. So that kind of throws a wrench in the Raiders' plans. So they could go with a receiver. I think for the Raiders, I'm going to take Mason Graham. It's partially like a best player available thing, but don't really have a second defensive tackle outside of Christian Wilkins, and so I think pair those together, and then you've got Malcolm Kuntz coming back from injury. That's a really good front four that they can kind of build around.
Yeah, I like that move quite a bit. The Jets here at 7. Tetro McMillan doesn't fall this often to the Jets, and I think he's going to be my pick here for them. I just love the size. I think his ability to win the 50-50 balls is incredibly impressive. He's physical. I think he's the perfect complement to Garrett Wilson. And if you're going to get the most out of Justin Fields, you got to surround him with a better supporting cast than what the Jets currently have. I think Tetro McMillan is the best player on the board and a guy that just fits what they want to do. So I'm going to take McMillan here at 7 to be the long-term wide receiver 2 opposite of Garrett Wilson.
So the Panthers, in real life, it seems like they're going to take Jalen Walker. That's probably not the move that I would make. I think I'm going to go with Mike Green out of Marshall, who I think is the second best at pass rusher in this class after Abdul Carter. Can win with power, can win with speed, a relentless motor, extremely violent with his hands into contact. And, he's not going to be like an elite run defender, but, plays with a really high motor in that phase and really physical taking on blocks. So I'll go with Mike Green to kind of start rebuilding their defense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Mike Green's the second best edge in the class opposite of Abdul Carter. And I think he showed some really good strides as a run defender. I don't think he's going to be a liability in that phase. So I really like that. The Saints here at 9, I think quarterback is in play now. Obviously, with Derek Carr's situation, we don't really know where that's going to be. I just don't think I would take a quarterback here at number 9. And so I'm going to go with Will Campbell here. Ryan Ramczyk retired, I believe it was yesterday. There was some buzz, but he officially called it quits. I'm going to take him to be the left tackle, move Talise Fuaga back to where he played in college at right tackle. Now I feel pretty good about the offensive line where I've got my bookend tackles. I think the interior has been okay at times. I'm a lot higher on Will Campbell than it sounds like you are. I think he is worthy of a top 10 selection. I think he could be a really good pass protector. He's got good hands to counter pass rush moves. So I'm going to take Will Campbell to the Saints at 9, keep him in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, no, I don't hate that pick at all. I've actually got him 9 on my board. My big thing is that I just think Mimbo is like a clearly better player than Campbell, but as long as you're not choosing between the two, yeah, I got no issue with that selection. And like you said, I mean, the Saints, still have holes on the interior, so you have the freedom to, let him play left tackle. If it doesn't work out there, you can slide him inside. So yeah, I think that's a good pick. Bears could need a running back. They need help up front. Could also use, there's been some buzz about them going tight end.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. I'm gonna go. I don't think this is a very common pick, but I'm gonna go with Derek Harmon, out of Oregon, who I have as my 12th ranked player. I think he's kind of the prototypical 3 technique. Really like does everything at a high level except just finishing when he gets into the pocket. But I think that would be a really good long-term building block for their defensive front.
Yeah, that's a move I haven't seen very often, but I love that move. His ability to win with swipes and counters is really, really impressive. And the interior of their defensive line, you got Grady Jarrett. I don't think he's the player he once was. So I'm a really big fan of that pick for Chicago. Got the Niners on the clock here at pick 11. I think I'm going to go with another interior defensive lineman here. I'm going to take Walter Nolan. I just love the athleticism that he has. I think right now he's a better run stuffer than he is a pass rusher, but I think the tools and the traits are there for him to really develop to being a legitimate pass rush threat at the next level. He's incredibly explosive, athletic. He moves really well for the position. He played a little bit of edge rusher at Texas A&M in 2023, so I think he gives you line versatility, explosiveness, good run defense. He's a guy that is a top 10 player on my big board. And I think for the Niners, he just makes a lot of sense. They've lost a lot of help on that defensive line. So I think Robert Saleh is going to try to fix the interior. And I think Walter Nolan is going to be a really nice piece to doing that.
D tackles flying off the board. So for the Cowboys, this is going to be a popular pick. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden to be the wide receiver 2 to CeeDee Lamb. You watch the Cowboys last year, and they were kind of a one-dimensional offense a lot of the time, where it was just like feed the ball to CD. So this gives them a reliable number 2 receiver. To me, the 4.29 is just like nowhere to be found on Matthew Golden's tape. I don't see that at all. I would have had him as a 4.46 guy. And I think there's some validity to the idea that the stopwatch got started late on his 40 time. But like, I'm not really drafting him to be this overwhelming deep threat. I think what he does best is intermediate separation and route running. And so, yeah, another good weapon for Dak Prescott.
I like that move. 13 for the Dolphins, one of the hardest teams to draft for, I feel like, especially now. They're looking to trade Jalen Ramsey. I'm still really high on Will Johnson. I might be too high. I think I have him as my number 4 player in the class. I think corner is a very big need for this team, with or without Jalen Ramsey there. I think that's an area they could look to get. Johnson didn't have the greatest athletic testing. I also think they could go offensive line. You got Kelvin Banks here. I like the way he fits in this offense. I think he fits seamlessly. I think he could play opposite of Patrick Paul. You could go with Gray Zabel, move him inside. I would have loved to go Derek Harmon here. That was who I was eyeing for them. I just don't think there's a guy here. I think I am going to go with Will Johnson. I think he's still the best corner in the class. Had a bit of a down year, but the way he plays in off coverage, I think his instincts are phenomenal. He moves really, really well for the position in terms of his fluid hips. The long speed is going to be a bit of a concern. It was there on tape, but I'm ultimately not as concerned about it as most people. I think he can be a lockdown number 1 corner at the next level. So I'm going to take Will Johnson at pick 13.
Yeah, that's where I went in my most recent mock draft. Seems pretty likely with Jalen Ramsey on the way out. So we haven't had any tight ends go, and so for the Colts, I'm going to go with Tyler Warren. This is a pick that happened like pretty frequently a few months ago. Now it seems like Warren's going in the top 10, and they're taking Colston Loveland in a lot of mock drafts. I really like both of the tight end prospects. I have heard that there's some medical concerns with Colston Loveland, and so this just is a much safer pick. And he isn't like a freak athlete, doesn't have not an elite route runner, although I thought that improved over the course of the season, but can give you inline blocking, really great at the catch point. I think has a high floor as being like a top 10 to 12 tight end at the very least.
Yeah, as a Colts fan, I like that pick. I think him or Jahad Campbell would be a home run if they're able to get those guys in the first round. Pick 15 for the Falcons. I think you got to go with the pass rusher. Their pass rush has not been great. A lot of good players on the board here. I'm going to take Donovan Ezeraku. I just love the way that he wins. Weird body type, but he is a guy that I think has some of the best hands in the class with the swipes and the spins. I think he's got one of the deepest pass rush tool bags. And for Atlanta, I think he's a good fit in Raheem Morris's defense. So I'm going to take Ezeraku here at pick 15 and just get some nice pass rush help.
Yeah, Ezeraku's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
Cardinals could go with Kenneth Grant potentially here. Could look at an outside corner, although there aren't really a ton on the board. I think that for the Cardinals, I probably will go with Kenneth Grant. The edge defenders, I feel like Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart would be a little bit redundant with Darius Robinson, who they drafted last year.
Yeah.
And Kenneth Grant has some work to do, but I feel like he could be so much more of a productive pass rusher in the NFL, because it almost feels like the only time he doesn't win is when he just like doesn't want to. I feel like if he just hit offensive linemen with power every play, he could be like a 40 to 50 pressure nose tackle, which is really valuable.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot for Arizona. 17 for Cincinnati. I think that's a nightmare situation for them with every defensive tackle seeming like off the board. Will Johnson's off the board. You could go Jahdae Barron. I don't think James Pierce, as much as I like him, I don't think he's their type. I think it's a little early for any of the other edge rushers. So I'm going to go offensive line here. I'm going to take Kelvin Banks, and I'm going to play him at guard, at least to start his career, and then hope that later on you got Amarius Mims there. I don't know how much longer Orlando Brown has on his contract off the top of my head, but I think he could be a long-term replacement at tackle, but he allows you to play on the inside right away. You got to keep Joe Burrow protected and upright. I think Banks has the athleticism to play at guard at the next level. Really good run blocker in space. I think his numbers were really impressive for Texas the past couple of seasons as well. So I'm going to take him at 17 and just take best player at a need for them here. Pick 17.
Makes sense. I'm going to stick at guard, and I'm going to go with Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. I think that, I really like Tyler Booker, but there are some limitations because he's just not like a fluid or twitchy athlete really moving laterally. And I think Zabel gives you more flexibility in the run game. And, the Seahawks, like, they've got to fix their interior offensive line. So it's really between one of those two players for me.
Yeah, I'm there. I agree with you. I have Booker slightly ahead of Zabel on my board, but
yeah, so do I.
I think Zabel's going to go higher just because he can play more in the wide zone where Booker cannot. Yeah. I do think that's a little bit overstated. I think he's a better athlete than what he tested at least on tape, but I do.
He actually ran at his pro day, he had a 68th percentile short shuttle, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good guard at the next level, but I do agree. I like Zabel quite a bit to Seattle. I think he's perfect for the Kubiak system that they're going to run. At 19, I'm sprinting the card in. It's Jahad Campbell. I think Jahad Campbell is one of the most complete players in this class. I think he's an elite coverage linebacker. You can use him as a weak side blitzing linebacker. I think you can do just about everything you want at the position. And I think he's coming off a torn labrum, I believe. But I think for Tampa Bay, we know Todd Bowles loves to use his linebackers. Levante David can't play forever. Jahad Campbell is going to be the pick for me. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I love Campbell. He's 6 on my board. So the Broncos, it seems like running back, tight end, or defensive line here. The defensive linemen are pretty much all off the board. I think in reality in this situation they would go with Amarian Hampton, but I'm going to take Colston Loveland. I think that he can immediately be one of the 4 or 5 most productive receiving tight ends in the NFL. He's the best route running tight end that I've ever evaluated, and he needs to add a little bit of weight, I think, to really hold up as an inline blocker, but he has the frame for it, and I think his blocking tape is a little bit underrated. So I'm going to go with Loveland to the Broncos.
Yeah, I like that fit a lot for them. At 21, I agree. Omarion Hampton's a guy I would be looking at if I'm the Steelers, but who knows what's going to happen with the Aaron Rodgers situation. I'm going to take Shedeur Sanders here. I think I have him 38 on my board, but I still think he's a borderline first-round caliber quarterback. The arm talent can be a question at times, but incredibly accurate. I think he's a good decision maker with the football. He's not the greatest athlete, but I think they need to get a quarterback in there. I think in the right situation, Shedeur Sanders can be a franchise quarterback. I can't think of a much better situation for him to go into than Pittsburgh. So he'll be my pick for the Steelers at 21.
Chargers at 22. Another team that needs a defensive lineman and can't take one. Receiver could go here. So I'm gonna go with Luther Burden here, who is my wide receiver 1 after Travis Hunter. Seems like he's probably gonna go in the second round in reality, but I think this is somebody that obviously does the kind of Deebo Samuel type of stuff at a high level, but is underrated for what he can contribute as a downfield threat, as an intermediate route runner. Really good hands. I just think he's a complete player that there's football character questions, but on the field, he's a top 10 player to me.
Yeah, I love Burden. I think it's a lot of prospect fatigue with him. I don't understand why he would fall to the second round, but at 23, I got the Packers. I'm going to take Jahdae Barron. I think he's one of the more versatile defensive backs in the class. I think he started his career as a safety for Texas. They moved him to the slot last year, played outside this year. So he's played everywhere for Texas and the defensive backfield. He might not be this most polished boundary corner, but if you play him in the slot, I think you could have one of the better slot corners in football. He's super quick to the football. The ball skills are there. I think he moves well for the position. I thought his athletic testing was surprising just how good it was, but I'm a big fan of him, and I think Green Bay, they need to go out and improve the secondary. I think Jahdae Barron gives them options to play him really anywhere, and he's an instant starter for them.
Yeah. Another team that needs secondary help with the Vikings. I'm going to take Nick Emanwari here, who, I think is kind of like the perfect chess piece for Brian Flores, where, he can play press man on tight ends. He can cover sideline to sideline as a deep safety. He can come down in the box and play blocks in the run game. Just kind of exactly the kind of weapon that he would want. And, I know that like Starks came into the year as a better, like people viewed him as a better prospect. I did as well because Emanwari wasn't really on my radar, but I thought Emanwari had better tape and then, obviously tested like one of the best athletes ever at the combine.
Yeah, I like that move. I think Flores would absolutely love it if the board fell this way also. At 25 for the Texans, I think they got to go O-line. I don't love the tackles here. I mean, Josh Simmons, I'm a big fan of Josh Simmons. Tyler Booker, I think I could talk myself into. I also think I could talk myself into Donovan Jackson, just a guy that can play tackle, can play guard, just gives you some insurance all over the line. It's a tough one. I think I am going to go Josh Simmons. Just take the higher guy on my board. He is coming off a pretty serious injury, but this is a team that they made some smaller moves. I don't think he's going to be asked to start right out the gate. Get a year, get healthy. I think he can be a franchise left tackle. He would be my tackle one in this class if he was healthy, but ends up falling, and I think the Texans scoop him up here at pick 25.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, even besides the injury, it just sucks that we didn't get to see him against better competition. But like the way he was playing against the teams that they did face, yeah, he was my number one offensive lineman. The Rams could use a corner. They could use an offensive lineman. We haven't had Shamar Stewart or Michael Williams come off the board, although I probably wouldn't take them for the Rams. I'm going to go with Josh Connerly here for the Rams. Kind of just a best player available at a valuable position kind of thing where like, I think he has some of the quickest feet of any tackle in this class, pure left tackle movement skills. Got to get quicker with his hands so that he can resist power more effectively. But I think he's got a ton of upside and, had the best performance of anyone against Abdul Carter.
Yeah, absolutely. At pick 27, I'm going to go with an edge rusher. Let me just verify something really quick. I'm going to take Shamar Stewart here. He is the highest rated edge rusher that I still have. And for the Ravens, they've gone after these physical athletes in the past. Mm-hmm. Stewart is at another level than the guys they've gotten, but a guy that I think could play inside, could play edge. I think he's a good run defender. He's just got to be more consistent as a tackler. So many missed tackles on tape with Stewart, but the explosiveness, the power, it's there for him. I definitely think there's a world where he is a much better pro than he was in college. So I think the Ravens take a chance on the upside and take Shamar Stewart at 27.
Yep, sticking with the upside picks, I'm going to take. Well, so it's between Michael and James Pierce here. I prefer Michael Williams as a player, but I might actually go with James Pierce for the Lions because what they really need is pass rush. And I also think they kind of have a culture where you can absorb like one player with some football character concerns. So I'll go with James Pierce just because I think Michael Williams, even though I really like him, I think he projects as like a run-stopping defensive end.
I'm there, and I also think that the Lions, they kind of could use some speed off the edge. You got Aiden Hutchinson, who's more that power guy. So I love Pierce. He's still my number 3 edge in this class. I know there's some concerns there, but I love the tape for him. 29 for the Commanders. I think I'm going to go with, Malachi Starks is on the board. I also think they could go with Michael Williams here. I think Jalen Walker's in play for them here. I'm going to go Malachi Starks. I think he is a versatile defensive back. They have some holes. They lost Jeremy Chin, but a guy that could play in the slot, can play single high free safety. He could do a little bit of everything. I think he's a great run defender as well from the safety position. I just love the way that he plays. He might not be the fastest guy in the world, but like Eman Wari, I think he can be a chess piece for this defense, and you can move him all around. So I'm going to take him to the Commanders at 29.
For the Bills, kind of set up perfectly for them. I'm going to go with Jalen Walker. When we start talking about top 10 hype for him, that completely loses me, but I still really like him as a prospect. Explosive, I think really powerful for his size, heavy hands into contact. And, I view him as a pure stand-up edge because I wasn't that moved by the linebacker tape, but, I think somebody that can really pair nicely with Greg Rousseau.
I like that pick as well. 31 here for the Chiefs. Again, offensive line would be the move, Donovan Jackson or Tyler Booker. But unless you view Donovan Jackson as a tackle, I don't know that they would take him here because their interior looks pretty good. You got Creed Humphrey, you got Trey Smith, you got Kingsley Suamataia to play there. So I think they could go defensive line here. Omar Norman-Lott, Tyleik Williams. Tyreek Williams is interesting to me. I think I'll take him, be the run stuffer next to Chris Jones, just get some more beef in the interior of that defensive line. So I'm going to take Tyreek Williams here. Just did not like the way offensive line fell for them here at 31.
Yeah, I really screwed over the Chiefs by taking Josh Connerly for the Rams. So Eagles, there aren't any defensive tackles that I would really want to take at 32. You know what? Let's take another Georgia edge defender and go with Michael Williams. Almost like seems too likely to happen, but yeah, I think that he's somebody that has top 5 run stopping defensive end potential like early in his career, and really quick and powerful hands, but I'm not sure that he's really like an edge bender type, but still can be like a productive, high quality number 2 edge rusher.
Yeah, I'm there. Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. First round mock draft, what we would do. Very interesting ideas. I still love that Harmon to the Bears pick, by the way. That pick, I think, would be an awesome move for them. But appreciate you, James, for coming on today. It was a ton of fun. Like I said, I will leave all of his stuff linked down in the description below. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.